Hey everybody, Jay Schlansky here from the Fifth Trooper Network. I just want to take a moment to thank you for checking out this show. Did you know that over at thefifthtrooper.com we have tons of other content, including blogs, other podcasts, all kinds of stuff. In addition, if you want access to exclusive content, you can join us on patreon.com/thefifthtrooper and join at any level and you'll get access to exclusive blog articles, access to our private Discord, and much more. So please check us out, and thank you so much for all your support.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Hercules Rockefeller, and I'm here with Santa, the Dread Pirate Roberts, and Mike.
Hey.
What's up, gentlemen?
Well,
hello there, children.
We're getting ready for Christmas here in the North Pole, and I'm so very excited that you invited me. I hope you boys have been nice this year. I don't want to bring the scoundrels coal.
I hope you talk like that the entire cast.
I don't think I can uphold this. If anyone listens to our RPG podcast, they know I'm terrible at accents.
You start off strong. It's all right. You start off strong.
Always, yeah.
It's hard to hold. It's hard to hold accents that takes a lot of work.
Yes.
For an extended period of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
They always, like, when I listen to them back, they're always just dumber versions of me, and I'm already dumb enough. I shouldn't do this.
It's just you, but with a really crappy, probably pretty racist accent.
Yeah. Most definitely, every time.
Whenever I DM'd D&D, like half the NPCs were just horrible British accents.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a real weird Southern drawl.
You tried to.
And then recently, I don't want to give too much away, but I have a very East Coast 1920s announcer thing going on.
Kind of
yeah.
Extra. Read all about it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I only have so many accents in my repertoire. I definitely can't do English or anything. So here we are. I'm Santa.
Yep. Yeah. So this is going to be our Halloween episode.
Spooky.
Yeah.
It's scary good.
Kyle was busy, so I'm standing in. And of course, you guys just dressed in your costumes. This is what I look like all the time.
Right.
We're gonna talk some Legion today. We're gonna do some trick-or-treating on our Legion cast with units. But first, Santa has a special Santa message.
Good boy. I shouldn't do it in the Santa voice.
Please don't.
Please, yes.
Well, I'm going to take this down. This serious face. For those of you watching the video, this is all kinds of bad shit. But anyways, so little announcement, big announcement actually. I want everyone to know that we're making some changes with our cast. So this cast, the Notorious Scoundrels, the biggest change that's going to happen here is you won't have to see or hear my stupid voice anymore. I'm going to be moving over to the Fifth Trooper podcast, as well as Tim Hannon is going to be joining me as my co-host on the Fifth Trooper podcast. And we're kind of bringing that cast back to its roots when we first started the Fifth Trooper podcast, more of a variety show that talks about Legion or whatever we want during that episode. And then
Legion-ish.
Legion-ish. And then that'll leave Hercules and Mike to talk about more competitive stuff. So Kyle doesn't have to give in to my whims of hobby and nonsense. So you guys could go back to high competitive, and we'll go to nonsense. And Santa's found other places for those elves from the Fifth Trooper to work. No, Evan and Nick and Austin are going to be working on different stuff. There is a chance that Austin and Nick will rotate on the Fifth Trooper podcast as our rotating third, because Kyle and I talk about this, like the 3 is like a really nice number to have on a podcast. But yeah, well, I think my goal is to get back into like interviewing members of the community and like doing more of what we used to do back in the day. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, so those are the big changes coming.
Yeah,
and next week they'll start. So
starting next week it'll be Mike and Kyle.
Yep.
I'm just on for this week, but
Right.
it'll be Mike and Kyle, and rotating third. So for Scoundrels.
Yep.
And we're gonna refocus on. I mean, we're still like 70% competitive, I'd say, but we're gonna go back to kind of just focusing primarily on competitive stuff because we've kind of found through user feedback and such that's what people want out of Scoundrels. So
I tried to change the Scoundrels, but it didn't take. They keep coming back.
So it'll be exciting. I think it'll be a chance for both casts to kind of differentiate a little bit. We have a lot of podcasts on the Fifth Trooper network, so
well, I think it's it's funny when I was thinking about this change, it kind of brings us back to our roots.
Yep.
And this kind of where we were, and I think that's what people liked and that's what made sense. And, so we'll, one of the big things with the Fifth Trooper podcast is just kind of bringing that back to a regular basis, weekly basis. And, just, anchoring down the brand again with the Fifth Trooper podcast. So I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be good.
Tim, you don't look as excited. He's like sitting there going, yeah.
He's a pirate. He can't, it's like against his brand to look.
That was actually me fighting the urge to do an accent, but like, yeah, we're going to put down anchors for sure. Yeah. I was really trying to stifle that, and that was just you were seeing the visualization. I'm also trying to figure out why I look so damn pale today, but whatever.
You're a ghost. You're a ghost pirate.
Evidently, yeah.
Need more time on the waves. In the
So,
sun.
Thanks.
How many more podcasts do I need to put you on before like the rest of Stabcast kicks you off? Like, what are we looking at? Like, what's the number?
Some of them will watch this and be like, Tim, what the hell? So it'll be great. That's how they're going to find out.
Yeah.
I'm not telling them. They'll find
Not
out.
Ben, because we got Ben on another one.
Oh, yeah. I made sure we got Ben before this happened. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. I just, we made an offer to take over Stabcast and they said no. So I'm just finding different ways to do it now.
You offered Ryan a cheeseburger. That's not the same thing.
Yeah, I thought it was an even trade. I mean, you said yes for a flight of tequila and a taco. So I mean,
and that's very on brand for me. Yes,
that is, yeah.
That's a little story for everyone. That was the whole thing. We were going to all these Legion events, and every time I saw one of the other Stabcast members, I would buy them dinner and be like, "Okay, now we own you now," and so. Tim was the only one that was 100% bought in. So
yeah,
the rest of them said
flight.
no.
It's fine.
That's very mobbish.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
You work for me now.
Yep. Oh,
Yep.
You enjoying that pizza? Guess who you work for?
All right. So today we're going to do trick or treat with Legion units.
Oh,
which basically means that we're going to talk about some units that people think are good but aren't, or at least that we think aren't, and some units that people think are bad but are actually good. So,
and it could be our own people right here.
That's right.
I was gonna say this could cause disagreements.
Yeah.
Who
this wouldn't be a very interesting podcast if it didn't, right?
I don't know. We're all dressed up. I think it's going to be interesting either way.
All right. Well, let's start. I'll start. I'm going to do one that has been near and dear to my heart.
All right, Hercules.
For many years. and that is Jedi Luke. People think that Jedi Luke is good, and he's not.
They think he's a treat, but he's actually a trick. See what we did there?
That's right.
Halloween.
You're gonna have to elaborate.
please.
I know I'm gonna have to elaborate
Expand on that,
because you're
that's rough.
wrong, but I'd like to understand your premise.
Okay. So for what you're paying for him, which is almost Yoda points, like he just doesn't do enough. You know, you got to take into the fray now in his one training slot so he doesn't die from stormtroopers punching him to death. So he's only throwing the 7 black in melee, you know, and the lists that you want to run him in Rebels, like he just doesn't the stuff that you used to support Luke with primarily at Rebel Troopers just aren't very good anymore. So
okay, but isn't that a problem with Rebel Troopers and the stuff? So here's my issue with the statement is that I think our Operative Luke is good. It's just Rebels suck. Therefore, there are no good lists with Operative Luke in it.
but there aren't plenty. There is at least one good Rebel list Force user in it. And that Force user is not Jedi Luke, it's Ahsoka.
It's neither Luke. It's neither version of Luke.
It's neither Luke. Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's totally true. It is at least Commander Luke. We saw Commander Luke basically run in that capacity at Crucible. It was fine list.
Yeah.
But I think you could put Operative Luke in that list and cut some stuff, and it would still be very good.
I also think I think it's worth mentioning how freaking amazing Luke's cards are. Like, he just does so many things that command the battlefield in addition to being a focus piece. Like, even if you use none of his cards, I think he's still good. But even though you work some of those command cards in there where you're canceling your opponent attacking, or even taking control of your opponent and then attacking yourself, or, you know, like getting to attack twice, whatever, however you want to do it. Like, you're doing all kinds of wacky things while also getting to disengage for free.
Yeah,
all the time.
So here, my take on this, and we've talked about, I played a significant amount of Operative Luke, and my take on this was he was good, but with some of the rules changes and the fact that once you go off with Luke and do your thing, the rest of your army really suffers, and it's hard to hold up. So once Luke is gone, but like the things that used to make him good, just through rules clarifications and changes, have stopped him from being good. Vis-a-vis force push and recover.
Have you served your mastered well on Yoda's Luminous turn yet?
No.
So I don't think you can dump all the tokens.
You
anymore.
Totally can.
You totally can.
Did they change it back?
It is 100% you can. It came up in my game on Sunday.
It's gross when it happens. It's really
upsetting. And I had to play around it. So A, you can do that. B, I think that like Jay, I think to your point, I think the issue with Operative Luke, if there is an issue, is that right now, the only good things in Rebels are characters. Those characters require you to take their command cards. Luke wants you to take all 6 of his.
I think that's fair.
And
I think his problem too is he's an island, right? Like, so not only are you taking all 6 of his command cards, he's really just out for himself. And so I think that's why the rest of your army suffers, you know, no matter what he's got going on.
Well, the command card thing is definitely one of the reasons why, at least relative to Ahsoka is a more appealing choice, because obviously she only has 3. But even like for those other 3 cards, since she has defend, she's still getting a significant dodge benefit.
Yeah.
On the cards on your other characters' command cards, which Luke has to play his command cards just to get dodges. So obviously he hits a little bit harder and he has disengage, but Ahsoka also has 2 training slots, so you can put tenacity into the fray in there, and then suddenly she hits as hard, if not harder, than Luke does. Obviously she doesn't have Master of the Force or disengage, but I would argue that she's more durable in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Lucasfilm
is so good. Look at this. They're doing this in all their media and in this game. Ahsoka over Luke. This is This is some bull crap. I'll tell you that.
I mean, I don't think Ahsoka is better than Luke, to be completely clear.
Well, not in a. I mean, look, she's also what 25 points cheaper,
She's 30 points cheaper, but
30
yes.
points cheaper.
Oof.
Yes, I just like. I mean, obviously, it's not a fair comparison, but I mean,
I don't think Luke is 30 points better than Ahsoka. Although I still think Luke is really good. I don't think he's 30 points better.
For me,
Ah.
it's the turning point for me with Luke was the deflect change, because when you don't have a choice with your training slot, you basically have to put Into the Fray in there. Like he really does not hit that hard, or as hard as you feel like he should for a 190 point beat stick unit, because he doesn't have the same support abilities that like the other 190 to 200 point force users have. Luke is a destruction engine basically, and like when you can't take tenacity with that one training slot, the 7 black dice, you're just whacking stuff with 7 black dice. Like, it's fine, but it's not that much better than Commander Luke.
Yeah, I mean, and how many times have you Son of Skywalkered and like whiffed on a good chunk of those with those black dice too, and you're just like, well, that was worthless,
Yeah.
I saw Al Paz do that at Worlds, and it was so sad. He just like whiffed 2 shots at once. It was awful.
I've done it many times. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, those black dice are fickle.
They're just, it's the same. I know we did that roll off years ago, right, where we rolled the 2 black dice versus the white and the black for the snipers to see which one was better. I think it was you and Bushman did it, Kyle. But like, the black dice, they just, especially when they're stapled onto a unit like that, you just like, you want them to hit harder, and they're just black dice, so they don't hit as hard as in your mind you think they should.
you guys really need to find a way to get some more aim tokens. I don't know what to tell you. Black dice are great.
Well, how do rebels do that, Mike?
I don't know.
I think you're both. I think you're both
buttocks.
right, though. Right? I think there's a problem with OP Luke, but then also it's a faction problem as well, right?
It's two things.
It's 2 different things, and the faction really requires support units where OP Luke is a cowboy, and so the rest of your army is getting dumped because he's got to go do what he has to go do it, right? And so you have to run another hero with him, but he costs so much that it's hard to do that.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I think he's a pretty high. I would put Operative Luke in the high variance category. Like I played against Droid's Rule in the quarterfinals of Invader on Sunday. He was playing Operative Luke. I was playing Yoda Star. It was a close game. He played him very well, and in fairness, he went like 12 for 14 on his first 14 saves with him. But
Nice.
I mean, like it's one of those things where like if you can't kill him on his initial like dive, like you're kind of screwed. Disengage is really good. It is a monstrously good. And so I don't know. I think the problem with Jedi Luke is that there's no shell that really wants him right now, and that is a symptom. That is a faction symptom to me, as opposed to a unit's symptom. I'll give you maybe he's a little expensive.
Okay,
but I still think, even with your explanation, right, Mike, I still think he's still a trick, because I think people want to take him and they're trying to slot him in and fit him into stuff, but it's just not doable right now for whatever the reason is, right?
Fair enough.
Jedi Luke, a trick. Ho
All right.
ho ho.
All right. Who else has one?
He's getting cold. You want to do yours, Timmy boy?
Sure. I think a lot of people, and this is maybe already controversial just saying this, but as someone who used to love them, I think a lot of people think dewbacks are really good. And I'm sorry, but right now, with the current rules as they are right now, they're just not. I think they were in a really cool spot, and then certain rules changed to where now they can be seen all over, and now they can't withdraw into melee. And it's just like, there's so many things that this creature trooper rules just murder them. I think they were really cool. Now I'm like, there's certain players out there that can play really well. I played Mickey last time I was in Dallas, and he wiped the floor with me with his Vader triple dues. But he's also played that list a ton. He's also an expert player. And also, even after that game was done, he was like, yeah, the dewbacks still aren't great. Because those were arguably the weakest part of his list.
I
He
was going to
succeeded
say,
in spite of the dewbacks rather than
Right.
because
Yeah,
of the dewbacks.
exactly.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
who
When
are
you
these
say-
like mythical dewback players that think they're good?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Thanks, Mike. I'm like,
Oh.
when you say a lot of people think dewbacks are good, what circles are you talking
I
to?
swear, every turn I look at, I see there are always these people like, oh, I'm going to bring dewbacks because they're so cool. And I can have all this stuff to do. I'm like, or they're just going to die. Or they're just going to die. And you're going to be sad.
Interesting.
I want them to be good again, but there's just so many changes that happen to them.
Again? Whoa.
There was a brief 5-minute period where they were really good, and
I
then
would
they
paint
stopped
myself as
being
a
good.
decent dewback
It's
player
when they
back
dropped
in the day.
Yeah,
They
when
were
they dropped
briefly
their
good.
points. When
Yeah.
they
Yep.
dropped the points, they for about a month
Yep.
they were
But
good. and then-
between really what was it? The pre CRB rules update, or sorry,
Mhm.
the pre CRB balance change, and then the CRB rules update.
Yep.
They were decent.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
still bitter from taking them to Worlds and then realizing with the changes that like FD cannons can now see them perfectly with like almost sometimes like it felt like no cover, and it was just awful. It was awful when you think you could hide and you just can't hide. It just feels real bad.
and when you can't, like, everything you can get on buildings except you.
Yep.
Well, you
Yeah.
can't
It's-
hide from me. I see you
You
when you're
have-
sleeping. I know when you're
You-
awake. I see the tail of your dewback. For goodness sake.
I can't remember the last time I played against a creature trooper, to be honest.
I think Tawns are still really good. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation we could have, but
Yeah, let's-
I think
What?
Tawns are
They got
Sorry.
I mean, people talk about like the climb rules being bad for Wookiees, but I mean, they were really bad for creature troopers.
Oh my
That's
God, they're
fair.
awful.
Because
Just
creature
awful.
troopers are melee units, and when every unit in the game, almost every unit in the game, can get on top of a building except you,
Mhm.
that's kind of a problem.
Yep, Tauntauns hop.
Yeah.
And you're trying to get around, and you're trying to get in melee, you're trying to get around things, you have to like walk all the way around, they just keep outrunning you, and it's just awful. And now again, you can't just like ping pong or not ping pong, excuse me, pinball your way like through and just withdraw into melee. Like, that was
Which-
it's bad. It feels bad.
So technically, you still can. It's just at a much lower speed, which I think is, I think that was a good change for the game, because there were a few things that were more frustrating than having like a bunch of tauntauns just rampaging through your army at full speed.
I mean,
Being
I
able to,
guess.
yeah.
I don't know that it would be a problem in today's meta.
yeah, I think it would be fine. I think it would be.
I don't even think they would make it to most enemy lines.
I mean, well, also now, like, think about taking some dewbacks against like a Wookiee defender list. You're just gonna die. You're just gonna get murdered.
Sure, yeah,
Like,
but they've always been skew lists, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
sure.
Even when tauntauns were like top meta, they still had trouble against
Heavy.
Palpatine,
Yeah.
which
Yep.
and double heavies,
Yep.
which were specifically like anti-tauntaun lists.
Yep.
So, which I think is fine for skews, because there were lots of other games where the tauntauns would just literally, like, with minimal nuance, just run you over.
Because Ram is stupid.
It's fine.
It's
That's whatever.
Okay.
it's not RAM that makes them silly. It's or at least that made them silly. It was the old disengage rules and their speed.
And nimble
and how tough they were
or not
for
nimble, excuse
what you were
sorry,
paying for
the
them.
Agile.
Agile's very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Move, get 2 dodges, attack, ram. It's fine. Everything's fine here. Anyway, but that's a different unit. Dewbacks don't have any of that shit. So
What are you talking about? Armor 1 and
Armor
Agile
1.
are basically
Yeah.
Oh, one! Wow, yeah. Good thing there's no impact out there, so that's fine, everybody. Yay!
All right. So
Anyway.
Dewbacks, bad. Trick.
Yeah,
Whatever.
they are a trick. Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
they are razor blades in your Reese's.
Oof.
It's a great band name, by the way, like a Halloween themed like punk rock band. Hello, everyone. We are razor blades in the Reese's.
This is making Santa uncomfortable.
Sorry, poison in
All
the
right.
apples. How about that?
So that was two things that people think
Mhm.
allegedly are good, but are in fact bad. What about something that people think is bad, but is in fact good?
Okay, hear me out.
All right.
I'm going to say Rebel Z6 squad. And here's why. Okay,
Okay.
ready?
Yep.
So Rebels are struggling right now. We touched on that with OP Luke, right? There's only a couple lists that are actually decent. I think some of the big problems are they have t-shirt saves and they don't output a lot of damage, right? And so I've just been thinking a lot about this lately. And I think going back to Z6 squads may be a good solution for them to add some firepower so that the rest of the armies not as dead on arrival when you're putting a list on the table, because I think as much as it's a slot machine with Z6, seeing, and I understand fire support and all that with Gar, but seeing the Z6 from the Gar on the table and how much dice they're putting out, like I think we're at a point in the game where we need to bring that back. So it's a slot machine, but you're giving yourself more chances of actually doing more wounds, especially if you have a hero like OP Luke who's off doing his own thing and you need to like hold the line on the other side of the table. Having what is it? It's 10 dice. Having 10 dice is not a bad thing to have to throw at people at range 3.
Yeah, I think my struggle with that is I've played a lot of Rebel Z6.
Mhm.
If you look at the Rebel list archetypes that are successful, it's basically Cassian, Vets, Ahsoka, snipers, sometimes FDs. Those are all things for the most part that have either critical, marksman, or sharpshooter, like ways to just directly bypass cover without having to actually get units out of cover. And you look at like a lot of the Rebel units that are suffering, and it's all the stuff that doesn't have that, right? Because Rebel units, more so than other factions, tend to have like smaller dice pools, but keywords that ignore other defenses like Pierce and High Velocity, right? You look at all the Rebel characters that have small dice pools, but they have Pierce. And that was kind of like their shtick. But now that all those pools are just bouncing all the time, the stuff that's left has critical, marksman, sharpshooter.
Okay.
And the Z6, even though it's 10 dice, it's not really that good at generating crits because it doesn't have critical. Like the vets obviously are more expensive. But a Mark II plus a vet is what, 112 points. And two Z6s is what,
is 120.
120.
Yeah.
So the Z6s are still more expensive. So you can either take 2 units with a critical or 2 units without critical, and the latter is more expensive. And what makes the GAR Z6 so good are 2 things. The first is surge tokens, which makes a huge difference on a Z6 pool. And the second is just generally token support, right? And the third, obviously, is fire support itself, where you can usually add those 10 dice to another pool, preferably one that also surges or has critical or something. So those are all things that like really supercharge the Z6. And I know that the Rebel Z6 is cheaper, but it's not that much cheaper. Phase 1 Z6 is 74 points.
Yeah.
So, and obviously that's apples to oranges.
But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Kyle.
Okay.
With a Rebel Z6, what's my odds of hitting and over cover?
So the average for Rebel Z6 is 3.5 hits. So most of the time, 1.5 over cover, which is not good.
Mm-hmm.
And on 10 dice, you're going to get 1 crit, sometimes 2. I mean, clearly it's a slot machine. Sometimes you get like 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on average, on 10 dice, you're going to get 1 crit.
Okay.
So you're going to get 1 crit. Sometimes one of those hits is going to count. And so you're getting like 1 to 2 past cover, typically. And they can't fire at range 4 like vets can, which is a huge in today's situation.
Well, just the one weapon can fire at range 4.
Sure, but it's a weapon with 4 dice and critical too.
Yep.
So And for me, that range 4 thing especially is like a big deal breaker between, even if you just compare the DLT, the Rebel DLT to the Z6. Because Rebel Troopers are made of peanut brittle, and range 3 is like the deadliest, other than range 2.
That's what I was just
That's
going
like
to say.
the deadliest engagement range.
That's the biggest problem for it, is that they just die at range 3 once you get to range. Like, that's the other thing with, at least with the GAR Z6, is you have red saves to hide behind. Which is nice.
And a million dodge tokens.
And a million, yeah.
And barrier.
Wow. You too, Tim?
And Guardian sometimes.
I think listen, I remember when the Rebel Z6 was really scary. That was when the game first started. That was, 6 years ago, however long ago that was.
Santa takes the challenge.
I mean, we were picking 1 or 2 models out of units. Right. And you were happy to do that. You were like, "Oh, I did some damage." It's like I killed one model out of like a Rebel Trooper unit. That woo,
Now we're out here wiping squads.
Yeah. Now I'm like, I shot that Rebel unit and it didn't die.
I didn't one shot it.
Like
that was terrible.
Yeah, I was like, that was well below average. So yeah, I mean, I think Kyle, you hit it on the nose for me there. I think so, Jay. I think to your point, I think the Rebel Z6 is like a high variance play that I think if the defense was just like a little bit better, I think might be like defendable. In that, like, Rebels, I think, need to be doing the amount of damage the Rebel Z6 can output. It's just like as soon as it makes it to range 3, it just gets vaporized instantly. And I think like not being able to operate in the range 4 band is a deal breaker for me, for sure.
Yeah, and if they were a little cheaper, or if like Rebel dodge spam was easier to do or cheaper, I think it'd be more interesting. More interesting conversation. But then I think you'd probably still just take the DLT unless you were like super strapped for points. The DLT hits harder at range 3 and you can shoot at range 4 if you need to.
Yep.
That's fair.
So I don't know. If
Rebel
it was
Z6,
like
it's a treat for Jay. For Santa, excuse me.
I mean, I think if you want to try and use the Rebel Z6, I think like fire supporting it with a Mark II, like is actually like pretty reasonable.
Yep.
But that's like a lot of setup, a lot of orders that you got to like invest in that. And, I think if you want to try and make it work, that's what I would do.
Yeah. Because that's actually pretty scary. That average is like 7, I think, without aim tokens. Because I remember trying that a couple times back in the day when the Mark II first came out. And it was actually like 7 is pretty good, for a couple of Rebel units. It's just fire support is so much harder to set up in the Rebel faction because your orders are usually going to your heroes. You don't have direct or anything like that. Usually you got to buy like a comms tech and an uplink on your vets, and then you have like 90-point vets.
Nice.
Right. So it's a lot harder to set up. I think if the MK2 thing, like if Rebels could get orders to their core much more easily, then I think there'd be a conversation to have like 1 or 2 Z6s in your list just to fire support with Mark IIs. Because that's how you supercharge that Z6 pool. Then they could do a nice little clone impression there for frankly a lot cheaper cost. But yeah.
So what you're saying is I have a chance.
Yeah. So you're saying there's a chance.
I mean, it's still throwing a lot of dice, so I mean there's always a chance for a crit.
But and listen,
that is a chance for a crit.
I hear everything you guys are saying, and honestly, I haven't played it, right? And that's generally how I learn is through playing. But it just was striking me, just hearing Mike and all the chatter about and the things I've seen, Guard do. I was just like, well, you could replicate it at least to a degree. Like, we're at a point in the game where throwing the most dice seems to be the best right now, and so so how can I throw more dice? That's so we'll see. Yeah. Anyways, that was my pick.
Right, I have another Rebel unit.
Man, we're just picking on the Rebels today. All right.
No,
I guess they are in a pretty scary
this is one that I think is good.
Yeah, this is supposed to be good.
And we talked about this on our internal Discord the other day, but Han Solo. Specifically as a Yoda counter, because his cards are great in that context. His attack is still garbage with the new cover rules. Boy needs sharpshooter too.
It's so bad.
It's really bad. It's
between that and dodge tokens
and dodge tokens.
Yeah,
If he had like sharpshooter 2 and high velocity, which I mean, it's Han Solo, right? Like he's, every time he shoots somebody, they die. That's what he does.
get like quick shot or something. It gives you like high velocity. I don't know. Yeah.
Who knows?
Keep going.
If any pistol should have high velocity, it's Han Solo's, right? Anyway, but the cards, because Yoda is, I mean, we talked extensively about Yoda, obviously, last week. But on that big fire support turn, this was actually Mike's idea. Throw an Ewok unit in your list. Ewoks have 6 wounds. If you want to like beef them up to 7 or 8, you can do that for relatively cheap. Use the new corner peeking rules to just throw the one guy out there. And then use reckless diversion on them. And then that big 20 dice fire support, if they're at range 3 of the Ewok, which if you're setting it up like this, they should be, they can only kill 1 model. And then the second fire support can also only kill 1 model. And every other attack for that turn, for the first 5 or 6 activations.
So what you've just said, in addition to everything else, is why Han is my most hated piece in this game. And I'm not joking with you. You can ask people that have played me with Han. Several times Han has almost made me quit this game. Like straight up. When I went to LVO one time, I almost just left. I was like, I'm just going to the strip because I'm done. He never dies. I have a stress ball, thank God. He never dies. He's invincible. And he's just, and you say his attacks suck. Magically, he always throws double crits against me. So I just take 2 models and 2 models. So he's always killing everything.
I mean, most attacks are good if you just throw 100% crits, but
I love Yoda. And like you said, he's the anti-Yoda. I think having a 0 pip card should be illegal. And the fact that the way he can just completely sabotage you as a player is so antithetical to how I've not just played Legion, but like how I am as a person. He is the antithesis of everything I am as a player, as a person. And I wish every time I see him, it's like the scene out of The Last Jedi where like you just want everything to fire on that man. I just become Kylo Ren. Like everything shoot him. To which I even had
that's what he wants. That's what he wants you to do, Tim.
I've even had opponents tell me like, "Wow, you really hate him," and I go, "Yes, I do. I truly do." I think it is. I think you're insane to underestimate a Han Solo. A good Han player is disgusting.
And then obviously, if reckless diversion fails you can just play change of plans on that luminous turn. So
change of plans. That card shouldn't exist.
I mean, it is a good thing. Those effects.
I think so
in the
too.
game, particularly. Yeah. I think in this point in the game's lifespan, it puts some like checks and balances on some things. Like if like a command card is like way too good, like Han can become an answer, right? Which I think is a nice off ramp design wise to have. So are you saying he's good, Kyle?
I'm saying he's good.
Okay, I concur.
I feel strongly enough that I'm considering bringing him to PAX. Mostly because I know that what I should do, if I want to do well, is get reps in with Yoda before then. Because I know that Yoda would speak to me. But all the cool people are doing that already. And I got to be hip because I haven't, so.
And Han shoots from the hip. So there you go.
That's right.
I mean, I would love it if you brought Han to PAX. I don't think he's good.
So good.
I said I was considering it.
Yeah.
Plus, you can do like the weird, like with the Ewok list, you can do the weird Guardian thing where they can Guardian crits for him and stuff like that. I don't think that's a game-winning strategy, but it is really frustrating to play against.
Well, like
it like daisy chains through C-3PO's ability and things like that to make it so like they have protector and then can Guardian for him, and it's just a whole bunch of garbage.
But you got to play Bright Tree in order to have access to that effect, right?
That's true. 14-act Bright Tree is a thing.
And do you still have to? Is it still the CRB that it has to be within range 1 of 3PO?
Is it a within effect? There's no way.
I don't think so.
Look it up.
I'm looking it up right now. They put
It
a
wasn't-
within effect on Bright Tree Village. Oh, it is within. Oh man, I'm sorry, guys. That's so bad.
I guarantee you that most people are not playing it that way, but that's what it is.
I guarantee you they're not either.
Just so everybody's clear, that means your entire unit has to be in range 1.
Within.
Within
But that
range
doesn't
1.
mean that be like you got to have them. They can't even.
Every part
Every
of every
portion.
base of every model in the unit has to be entirely within range 1 of 3PO for you to use the guardian.
That's the
effect.
worst keyword in the game is within. It's not a keyword, I know.
It's not a keyword. Well, it's reserved usually for things like deployments
I
and
know.
objectives where it makes sense. And there are 2 occasions where it seems to be obviously a typo. And that would be lead from the front and then 3PO's guardian. So I don't know. Anyway, that's what it is. So Ewok players, just FYI.
I'm glad you said something. I actually didn't know that. I learned anything today.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
know that either.
I don't think it really matters, but
No, it's not a game-winning strategy.
Probably
but
not.
again, it is very frustrating to see.
yeah.
When Han has Guardian like 10,000, you're just like, oh, okay, this is great.
I'm still unclear on how you actually use that on Han.
Because they have Guardian
Mhm.
while they're within range. It's not like a steamed leader when it
Oh,
only
I
is
see. It
active
has to
when
be
they're being shot.
specifically 3PO being the target.
Yeah.
They just have it.
No,
It doesn't have to be 3PO.
It doesn't have to be.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just gain Guardian when they're close enough to 3PO.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is
That's-
interesting.
That's not true. While they're within range 1 of C3PO, Ewok trooper units gain Guardian 2 C3PO.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah. That doesn't work.
And this is why
That's
we're
not a
moving
thing.
Tim to the 5th Trooper podcast.
That was cheating.
But in Tim's defense, I've heard somebody say this.
Yeah, someone
Elsewhere
said it worked.
that-
Yeah, someone said they did the research, and
So
it worked.
I suspect
they said they did the research.
I suspect the way that you have to make this work, just because the people that are talking about it, like and you Tim, like definitely know their stuff. Like, I think you probably also have to have a steam leader in addition to
Yes.
divine influence,
Yes,
because the
absolutely.
second sentence, I don't think relies on the first.
Right, because it was Han had esteemed.
Correct. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And that's how it was working. Was Han had esteemed, and it was like, yeah, I definitely had to ask him to explain it several times. It was like, I don't like, I believe you, but I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
So
And then you have Chewie
the
with
crit
him too.
the crit thing does not apply to 3PO specifically.
Correct. It says
Yeah.
while
Yes,
using
yes.
Guardian. It doesn't say while using Guardian
Right.
C3PO.
Okay.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right, that makes sense.
fun Han times. See, but look at all the fun you can have with Han, the disgusting creature that he is. He's just a bad time. He's
got tricks.
He does have tricks.
Yeah.
He's maximum shenanigans.
Which ironically in this segment makes him a treat. There you go.
But
It wasn't even. I mean, this is a half joke. I mean, it's
No,
true.
you hit it.
Yar.
well, you just brought down this whole part of the podcast. Thanks a lot, Tim.
Well,
I'm starting to question my decisions now. I gotta be
Everybody.
alone with this guy on another podcast. Oh man.
No, not
All right,
alone. This way
let's do 1 or 2 more.
Okay.
Mike, you put some in our chat that I feel like
Yeah.
will enrage me. So why don't you pick one of those?
I honestly don't know that I've ever seen you enraged. So yeah, let's
Yeah.
do that.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
I mean, you know,
Do you care which of the 4? I think they're all probably maybe not equally enraging, but they're all units that I think you would consider to be very good.
I think there's
Yes.
one here that is obviously more controversial than the other 4.
Sure.
And that would be Anakin.
Okay. Yeah. So I put Anakin on this list because I cannot count the amount of times that people have told me that like Anakin needs to be nerfed and all this other stuff. I think, frankly, I don't think he's good enough in like like in a competitive setting. I really don't think Anakin cuts the mustard. He is very efficient. He does a lot of important things. He does not have enough tools at his disposal to win the games that you actually need a Jedi to be able to carry. Once you start playing people that know what they're doing, he doesn't have the no time for sorrows effects, or like there's nothing. He's got nothing. He's just a token battery.
All of his stuff makes your stuff harder to kill or hit harder, and that's it.
Yes. As soon as you start losing with an Anakin list, there's no way back because you don't have anything in your back pocket. And the only reason Anakin lists have succeeded in the past, like frankly, is because of Padme. And the reason that they succeed is because Padme's got tricks, and she's actually able to affect the game state in a way that allows you to come back from a losing position. Anakin just lets you win more.
Oh, take that, Kyle.
I definitely agree with you with what his kit looks like. I think where I disagree is the concept of like a premium token battery, essentially, is what he is. I think that still has a place because you said when he's winning, he's with Padme. Well, he's cheap enough that you can pair him with Padme and still have a bunch of other like beefy things to put in your list. And there are lots of things in the game where their only job is to like be tough and kill things or to help your other units do that. And Anakin is probably the most expensive of those things. But in my experience playing Anakin, I have found that to still be very valuable. I definitely agree that he is not a playmaker.
I think so. Here's the thing. I mean, I think we both played a lot of Anakin. I think a lot of other people have played a lot of Anakin. I think there is a good fundamental reason that Anakin doesn't win tournaments. And it's because he doesn't have the tricks. Anakin places very highly often because he can shoot people off the table and he can do the things that Gar is good at doing right now. But Anakin does not win tournaments because he's got no flair. He doesn't have it. He's not there. He doesn't have the spice. I don't know what to say. I've played like 150 games with Anakin.
I'd like to point out, Kyle, that Hercules, that Kyle and I had a conversation about this not too long ago about when Kyle went to a tournament and didn't bring Padme and didn't do so great.
But then I brought Padme and I did fine.
Yep. So here we are.
I would argue, and this is going to be a hot take, I suspect, but I think in a lot of those lists, you could swap Anakin for Kenobi, and you would still win the majority of the games that you won, and it would be fine. It's not different enough to, and Kenobi at least brings tricks. I'm not saying Kenobi is better than Anakin. That's silly and stupid. But like, but I think
I was like, I don't know, man.
I think Anakin. Everybody paints Anakin to be like this big nightmarish thing in the room that's like unbeatable. And I look at all these tournaments of like good players playing Anakin, and they never take the tournament down. Like I've seen like maybe 1 or 2 large tournaments won by Anakin lists when there is a large majority of the field playing Anakin. He just doesn't get there.
So one thing I will say about Anakin is that, and I think maybe this is a credit to Legion itself, but the games that I have lost with Anakin, I have still been ahead on kill points, sometimes like vastly so. And that kind of speaks to the fact that like the thing he does is he makes your units harder to kill and he makes them better at killing stuff. But Legion's not all about killing stuff.
No.
So it's a big component of the game for sure. But yeah, I think there's something to your point. I think his cost and how effective he is at doing those things, making your list more efficient, are enough that you can take someone like Padme in your list and make it so that Anakin doesn't need to be the playmaker, because something else in your list has tricks. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I really wanted to disagree with you, Mike, but now as you were talking, the more I was thinking about like I used to play a lot of Anakin, and then I mean, to be fair, it's been a while, and so I can't pretend that I'm still a good Anakin player. But there was a time, but it was a different game space back then. But even when I was decent with him, Padme was there.
Yeah.
I was really trying to think of a time where she wasn't, and I'm like, no, he's got a point. Like, yeah, she's always there.
You need Padme. Anakin is on rails. When you put Anakin on the table, your opponent knows what you're doing on turn 6. Your opponent knows how the game is going to play out. If they like are
If they're
good at
experienced
Legion,
enough,
right?
yeah.
Like they know what the end state of that game is going to look like. They know exactly what you're going to do. You can't do anything that is going to trick them or outplay them, really. Like, you're just running an efficiency list and trying to efficiency them into the ground. And sometimes that just isn't good enough. Sometimes they roll blocks, and what do you do in that situation? Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, that's my
You play
okay.
Yoda instead.
Real quick.
I mean, yes.
I have one, and it's just because we've been talking, I've been hearing rumblings throughout the community, and mine is Yoda. I think people think he's a treat, but he's actually a trick. And here's why.
Now, so you got to defend that one because
I don't think I do. I think it's a really easy defensible. I think it's really easy.
This seems a counterpoint directly to what we've just been talking about.
I think, depending on the point he makes, I think he might be right, though.
Okay, go on.
Okay. Oh, wow. A lot of pressure.
Go on, Santa. Spill your bag of secrets.
So, go ahead. What were you going to say? Go ahead.
Well, I would just like to point out that Mike has said that you're what, like 18-0 with Yoda?
I'm closer to 25-0 at this point. But
okay.
Anyways, please continue.
Yeah, I just want to put that on context about this conversation.
So two things. I think I have two thoughts on this. One, and this is something we've mentioned before. Yoda is extremely difficult to use. So I think what happens is a lot of people hear Mike saying what he just said about how he's 25-0 with Yoda, and people were asking for his lists after our conversation we had, and are really, and they're like, well, Yoda, I must have been missing something. I'm going to get Yoda and I'm going to play him. And I think it's a trap, because I think it's a very high skill set in order to run him as someone who has run Yoda. Number two, I think it's all about what surrounds him that makes him good. And we talked about this too, but Padme, right, is what's putting him up there, just like Anakin. Because I don't think a Yoda Chewie list hits the same way.
I disagree with that, but okay. And also,
if that's the case, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just gonna say, it's like caveat. Your first point, my issue with that is saying it requires a high skill ceiling means that, or floor or whatever.
Nice ceiling.
That you're basically saying just don't try, and I have a problem with that. Like,
no,
you need to try. You're
I'm
going to get
don't
better
try.
somehow.
I'm saying that if you on a whim are listening to this podcast and you just go, oh, I'm going to take this and go win, that you're in for hurting.
Yeah. Not on
I'm
a
not saying
whim,
don't try. I'm just
like,
saying you're not good enough.
Listeners, I believe in you.
I think, Jay, this is the point that I was hoping you were going to make, and you made it. And I think you're right. A lot of people have picked up the Yoda list since over the last month, and I get a lot of people being like, how do you win games? Mm-hmm. And the answer is very carefully. And it is I wouldn't say it's hard, but there's a lot of things you got to learn to play that list in the way that it needs to be. I also think that list does not work if Padme ain't in it. To your credit, and there too, I think the only reason that list works is because Padme is there. And does that mean Yoda is a trick? In the same way that like operative Luke wasn't or was. Yeah, I think that maybe that's very possible.
So if Padme is the real key here, why are like pure clone lists with Padme not good? Or at least not as good as Yoda Anakin lists with Padme.
I mean, I would argue that if you were gonna not take a Jedi, I mean, like you still have to have Padme.
Sure.
So, you know how I would explain it? Is Padme is like a bicycle. And I don't mean that in the bad way. What I mean, I'm just trying to come up with but okay. So or Yoda or Anakin's like a bicycle, but Padme's like putting an engine on it and making it like a motorcycle. So you could still go and you're still going to get where you're going. But if you add Padme to something, she's going to make it go faster. But if you don't have the wheels to begin with and you just put a motor, you're still not going anywhere.
I think
maybe, but a motor by itself on the road doesn't go anywhere either. At least you can ride a bike somewhere.
So
yeah.
I would extrapolate maybe, Jay, this, I don't know if this is
maybe that was a bad analogy.
maybe what you were trying to say.
So I was just trying to
Santa thing's really getting to me, boys.
Is that some other analogy, please?
Yes.
Padme is a unit that scales with the effectiveness of the units that she supports. If you are supporting a bunch of phase 1 troopers and giving them dodge tokens and aim tokens, that's not nearly as good as feeding dodges and aims to full arcs being fire supported by things, or like giving dodge tokens to Yoda. All of a sudden, you can have like 3 dodge tokens on Yoda before he even goes and does his target thing. Like there can be like Yoda with 5 dodge tokens on some turns, and like, and that is, are you, so like, let's just hypothetically say, you have a target priority between you can shoot at Yoda, who has 5 dodge tokens, or a clone trooper unit that has 5 dodge tokens. Who do you shoot at? You shoot at the clone trooper unit because you might actually kill something. You're not going to shoot Yoda,
and you won't get deflected.
And I mean, yeah, you also won't get deflected, but like the chances that you do any damage to Yoda, like even if you do damage to Yoda, it's like you're not going to kill him. At least if you shoot the clones, you're going to like take a body off the board, and I think, or potentially take a body off the board. And I think when it comes to aim tokens and stuff, like the better your dice pool is, the more aim tokens matter, right? I mean, I started toying around with putting targeting scopes in my list just to take advantage of the aim tokens off Padme, like on those fire support shots. I don't know. We'll see how that is. I don't want to like go down a Yoda Padme hole here, but I do think that when it comes to Padme, like the reason that she is good is like directly correlates to how good the thing is she's supporting. To your point about why she's not in regular gun lines, Kyle.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think the conclusion there is that Yoda's good, in my opinion, because Yoda scales well with Padme.
That's fair.
Yoda's, yeah.
And I know that Yoda is difficult to play. I personally dislike that as like a way to say that a unit is bad, or less good than people think, simply because there are a lot of good players in this game. And, personally, I've always believed that that's like the standard that you have to balance to, because everything else will trickle down. And if most people can't be successful with a unit that's good, I think it's fine.
Okay. But my argument here is we were seeing some of him, right? Like we were seeing a little bit of him, not a ton, but we started seeing a little bit more and some interesting stuff. But if he was so good, you know what I mean? If he's that good, people would have been playing him more. It's not like he was a secret unit. Like he's been out for a while. Like
it's
people
just
know what he's capable of.
But it's a totally different way to use him. I mean, it's kind of like with the Blizzard Force list. When Blizzard Force first came out, people were doing like double ATSTs and Veers and all that stuff. And then somebody was like, let's do Operative Vader and bikes. And that's it. And then suddenly it was like unlocked, right?
Right. But I think it was unlocked because Blizzard is kind of straight. Well, the original Blizzard we talked about this, where it takes bad players, makes them good, takes good players, makes them great, and takes great players to be almost invincible, right? When you played that Blizzard. But
Blizzard has
does,
a much higher floor than Yoda does.
yeah, Yoda does not do that. Yoda only checks like one or two of those boxes.
I mean,
Sure.
yeah, I think that those are all fair things. I also think like the only reason this list exists at all is because the most recent points rebalancing, like the fact that Arcs came down and Padme also came down, was a pretty big deal. Yoda's a very expensive piece.
Yep. Yeah, it makes it possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's expensive because he's good.
And maybe the pass mechanic is maybe the biggest thing.
Pass was also, I mean, there's a lot of things really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and this contributes to Republic generally, not specifically just Yoda, but the points for Yoda, the pass for Yoda, but also like the cover rules, since most things that are counters to clones have small dice pools, right? Things that bypass cover, like Pierce and High Velocity, tend to have small dice pools. The choke nerf, those are like the primary two things. Objectives being kind of devalued with the blue-red player changes, because clone lists are not typically mobile. So all of those things kind of accrue, right, to be good for clones generally, and then some of those things are good for Yoda specifically. Yeah. We could have a whole separate thing about that.
Well, and I think, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jay.
Well, I was going to say too, as we're going through this, right, like, I think a unit being good or bad is also subjective, even just between the four of us. Sure. Because like in my head, when I say Yoda's bad, I don't mean he's bad in particular. I mean he's a bad unit for you to try to pick up and just start playing with, because in my head, a good unit is something that anyone could pick up and start playing with. Like Blizzard was a good list because anybody could pick it up, you could build it, and you could start doing well with it, right? Like right off the bat. Where there's certain, like I think Operative Luke is one of those where you could, in that regard, he used to be a unit you could just pick up, put on the board, and start playing, and he would make plays, whether or not he was very forgiving of mistakes. And so in that regard, Yoda is not forgiving of mistakes, and so that's to me what makes a good unit, because I think there's stuff that people have played and won with in this game that weren't good. They just found they are just a good pilot, or had a particular, just saw through the matrix, like what Mike's doing right now, and just saw through the matrix and went, wait a second, and started playing something that just spoke to them. And knowing Mike and his play style, and like that, not everybody plays like that. If at all.
People hate playing my version of Legion.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
It's true. I tried it once. I tried it at LSO. It was god awful, and I will never do that again. That's you, and you do you.
I will do me. Speaking of, Kyle, you had pointed out a bunch of stuff that like contributed to clones being good. I want to put another thing up for a trick or treat. I think every strike team that does not have the character Echo in it is people still think are good, with the exception of the BX Commandos, but they're actually very bad. I don't know how much of a hot take that is, but I think they're tremendously bad now.
Okay, go on.
I think there are two units that are basically in every Rebel and Gar list right now. One is Cassian, the other is Echo. I would say that in about 50% of your games, you're going to play against one of those two lists once you make like, I don't know, top 32 or top 16. And they eat strike teams alive because of how strike teams work now, with you pull the second guy as opposed to the leader, and then you just get last firsted and your strike team's gone, or heaven forbid you go real early and they're able to kill one, and then Echo or Cassian just picks off the other one basically for free. And I think a lot of people are still stuck in this world where they're like, yeah, I'm going to activation pad with this 2-wound unit that's going to like do damage at range 5. And you know what? Clones are real good right now. So let's take some things that have high velocity and pierce. And I actually think snipers are pretty atrocious into clones. Which we can argue about the validity on whether that's a healthy thing or not. But I definitely think that that's true.
I agree.
I'm
I
biased
think
because I've never really liked strike teams, so
Yeah.
I'll agree. But that my agreement is
I've-
not worth much here because I would agree with that point for years. So
yeah. So they feel like they're a necessary component of Rebel lists in particular, but also to some degree Empire lists, simply because they have that high velocity in Pierce, and like some long range high velocity Pierce is better than none. But those two dice pools are absolute garbage into heavy cover. Um, like real, I mean, there's only like a 50-50 shot that you even pick up one model.
And that's if
and-
barrier isn't on the table.
Correct. Yeah. And sometimes that one model is going to be like Boyle or something. So, it, the days of getting like long range no cover shots are 100% gone, and that makes them lose a lot of value. You alluded to the casualty removal rules. Personally, I think those were like mostly positive for the game. I wish that strike teams had a special way to like still operate the old way, because 2 wounds is nothing. Certainly not for a unit that's almost 50 points. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that you still sort of have to take them, especially in Rebels, because like, I mean, I guess you could pay up a little bit for FD cannons, but you get more than 1 or 2 FD cannons, and like there's a real diminishing returns on how many FD cannons you can actually make useful. So just because of how Rebel lists tend to fill out, I think you probably still end up with like 2 of them. But I see where you're coming from, for sure.
Yeah, I think in my experience, the challenge, especially recently, like we're in this new clone meta here, which was coming, but with Inferno and Dark Troopers and some other stuff that was happening anyways, like it was already hard to like explain to myself why I was bringing a a strike team. I'm just like, dude, I gotta put these points somewhere else. Like, yeah, it's extra activations, but they're not gonna be doing much. I'm mostly going to be hiding them and trying to score points late to try to get, but I can't put them out there because the ATST will eat them up, or Dark Troopers will fly in behind them, and it was becoming a problem. So I agree. I agree with you. It's just it's just when you have the points and you don't know where else to put them, you're like, screw it, I'll get myself an extra, yeah.
Well, and I think to your point, Mike, like I got to play, so I played Double Bounty. I was playing with Double Bounty against the Double Bounty list at Crucible, and I think I had 3 snipers, and then he also had 3 snipers, but also one of the snipers was Inferno, and then also a 4th sniper in Iden. And so like being able to have that, and he just was able to just between Iden and Inferno and Tac Strike and everything like that, was just able to just completely annihilate my 2 wound guys. That was just I couldn't compete. I just couldn't compete.
When you're able to like put range 5 critical Pierce 1 shots on the board, basically guaranteed,
yeah,
like you just can never expose your snipers ever, which means they don't do anything.
Nope.
Which means they're useless. Yeah,
exactly. And it's not like when you move, like they're, Kyle, you were talking about their dice pool, like they are hot garbage when they're moving and shooting. They need that aim token.
Yep.
If they don't have that aim token, you might as well not shoot at all.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like a 25% chance to actually get 2 paint when you don't have a name token, which is terrible.
Yeah, it's so bad. And yeah. Anyways,
That's a good one.
It was a good one.
Yep. All right. Well, I propose.
I think that was the least controversial one we did. We're all like,
Yeah.
I thought that I was gonna have to work harder for that one.
Listen,
No.
again, that's the Reese's of the trick or treat opinions right there. Everyone can agree is great, unless you have a peanut allergy, but it's okay.
I think it's just because people want it to be great too. They're like strike teams. Rah!
That's fair.
But it's hard to drop the old ways.
It is.
It is until your strike teams drop, and then you're like, oh, okay.
And I do think it's just a little bit awkward from a list building perspective that you still kind of have to take them.
Yeah,
in certain list structures.
I would argue that like rebel troopers or stormtroopers with not targeting scopes, electro binocs is a much better use of 48 points.
Oh, I agree with that.
Especially in Rebels, there's been lists where I've definitely eating up my 6 core already, and then going, well, I still got a lot of points here. What am I gonna do now?
I mean, you could do Ewok slingers.
Yeah.
The challenge with slingers is, there's no way in like a normal rebel list to give them access to courage 2 for purposes of panic unless you take Wicket.
Right.
So, and not that Wicket's bad, but it makes your list structure even more awkward than it is already.
It totally does.
So they're good value, but the courage one is killer in a normal rebel list. Yeah. All right. Well, any final Halloween thoughts, gentlemen?
I like candy and cookies and milk.
I'm already sick of candy.
I hope we have trick-or-treaters, because otherwise I'm going to have 4 bags of candy to eat to myself, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to just take it to the office.
You should be okay. You live kind of in town.
Yeah.
So we do not get trick-or-treaters where I live.
I bet you don't.
Because your house is like what you warn kids about.
Yeah. And if
somebody knocks on your door, you lock it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Who the heck? Let me tell you real quick. I know people hate my stories, but I don't care. So I was home. So I was home the other day, and I was doing something down in the basement, and I hear, like, it's the middle of the day. Everybody's at work or school, and I hear like stomping across the floor. I'm like, somebody's in my house. Oh my God. Hello? And I don't hear, nobody answers. And I'm like, oh, and I hear him go all the way upstairs, and I'm up to our second floor, and I'm like, oh my God. So I like run upstairs. Oh, hello. I'm like yelling, like trying to be the tough Luke. Hello. Get out of my house, and I go upstairs, like ready to like, I'm going to have to like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's one of the kids. So he's like, oh, hey, what's going on? I go, did you not hear me saying hello? He's like, yeah. I was like, I could have killed you. And so basically what's happening is our older ones are now getting their licenses. So they just come and go as they please. And so now that's something I have to get used to. It's like, oh yeah, you're just going to show up at a random time that I wasn't prepared for and think somebody's breaking into the house.
Yep.
Anyways, that's
should have
what
confronted
we do
him
at my
in the
house.
Santa costume.
All right.
Yeah. I'm keeping this on through the new year, I think.
That's right.
Just keep it on the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right.
Yep.
Well, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Hercules.
I'm Santa.
I'm Mike.
I'm the Dread Red Pirate Roberts. Yar.
I can't
Stay
believe
cool,
Also,
Fruit Matt.
I can't believe my last episode on Scoundrels is me signing off as Santa. Bye, everybody.
Some call me Kim.